At 73, the IRS sent him one letter. He set it on the kitchen counter, told himself he'd open it later, and forgot. 3 years later, that one envelope had cost him $45,565. Not a fine for doing something wrong. A penalty for doing nothing at all, for money he was supposed to take out of his own account and simply didn't. If you're 73 or older or getting close, and you have a traditional IRA or 401k, this isn't a warning for someday. It's a deadline that already exists right now, whether a letter has arrived yet or not. Stay with me. I'll show you exactly what that letter said and why the number kept growing every single year he looked away. Let me put you in his kitchen for a second, because I think some of you already live here. He was 73, recently retired, healthy, careful with money his whole life. One afternoon, the mail brought a plain envelope from the IRS. No red ink, no urgent stamp, nothing that screamed "Open me now." Just a government return address and his name. He set it on the counter. He was going to deal with it after lunch, then after the weekend. Then it slid under a stack of magazines, and by the time he thought about it again, he genuinely couldn't remember what it said, only that it hadn't seemed like an emergency. Here's what makes this different from most retirement mistakes we cover. This wasn't a bad decision. He didn't pick the wrong account or convert at the wrong moment. He simply didn't act. And that's exactly why it's dangerous, because doing nothing feels safe. It doesn't feel like a choice at all. So what was actually inside that envelope? Because whatever it said, it was standing between him and money the government had already decided he had to take out. Here's the part almost nobody explains clearly before it happens to them. Once you turn 73, the IRS stops letting your traditional IRA or 401k sit untouched. You're required to withdraw a minimum amount every single year. It's called a required minimum distribution, an RMD. Not a suggestion, not something you get to when you feel like it. A yearly deadline, the same as a tax return. The amount isn't random either. Each year, your account custodian takes your balance from the previous December 31st and divides it by a number the IRS assigns based on your age, a life expectancy factor. That gives you the minimum you must pull out. And here's the detail that catches people off guard. That percentage grows every year you age. It's a small bite in your early 70s. It's a much bigger bite in your late 80s. The letter he set aside wasn't a bill. It was a notice, the kind the IRS sends when their records show an account holder past 73 who hasn't taken a required withdrawal. In plain terms, they already knew. He just hadn't found out that they knew. And this rule doesn't only apply to one account. It reaches traditional IRAs, old 401ks from jobs you left years ago, 403bs, and most other tax-deferred accounts you funded during your working years. Every one of them runs on its own clock. A Roth IRA is the one major exception. Money you already paid tax on going in generally isn't forced out on a deadline. But traditional, pre-tax accounts don't get that pass. Once you turn 73, each one starts counting down separately, whether you're paying attention or not. He didn't understand any of that at the time. He just saw a government envelope, assumed it could wait, and went on with his week. So what happened the week after that, and the year after that? Quick thing before we keep going. If this is the kind of deadline you'd rather know about now than find out about later, subscribing is how the next case file reaches you before your own letter does. All right, let's keep going. Here's what makes this mistake so easy to make. Nothing happened, no knock on the door, no frozen bank account, no angry phone call. The year he missed his first RMD, life went on exactly the same as before. He paid his bills, saw his grandkids, took a short trip in the fall. If ignoring that letter had been dangerous, he thought, wouldn't he have felt it by now? That silence is the trap. The IRS doesn't usually chase a missed RMD the moment it's missed. Their systems catch up slowly, sometimes a year or two behind. So, a second letter arrived the following year. Similar envelope, similar plain language, and by then he'd already half convinced himself the first one hadn't mattered. He set the second one aside too. Meanwhile, the money he was required to withdraw didn't go away. It just kept sitting in the account, growing, and so did the size of the withdrawal the IRS still expected, now piling up year on top of year, quietly, with his name attached to every one of them. By the time a third letter arrived, this wasn't a one-time slip anymore. It was a pattern. And patterns are exactly what turn a small, forgivable mistake into a very expensive one. Here's the part that stings the most looking back. None of this required a bad year, a health scare, or a moment of panic. It required nothing, the same nothing, 3 years running, because the first year taught him, wrongly, that nothing was exactly what this deadline seemed to want from him. Here's the first cost, and it's the one the IRS doesn't hide. If you miss a required withdrawal, you owe a penalty on the amount you should have taken out, what's called an excise tax. For a long time, that penalty was brutal, 50% of the missed amount. A newer law softened that considerably. It's now generally 25%. And here's the part that matters most for our story. If you catch your own mistake and fix it quickly, before the IRS ever contacts you, that penalty can drop all the way down to 10%, sometimes even less. But notice the condition. Before the IRS contacts you, he'd already received the letter. Multiple letters. Once the IRS has already flagged it, that lighter 10% doesn't apply anymore. He was locked into the full 25% on every year he'd missed. 25% of a 5-figure withdrawal is real money on its own, but it's still just the tax you can see, the one printed plainly in the rules, the one anyone could look up. The bigger cost was still coming, and it wasn't written on any form he'd ever seen. When he finally sat down with someone who could untangle this, the fix seemed simple enough on paper. Withdraw everything he should have taken over the past few years all at once to get current. That single decision, fixing 3 years of missed withdrawals in one tax year, did something he never saw coming. Every dollar of those withdrawals counts as ordinary income the year you actually take it. Take 3 years' worth in 1 year, and you don't just pay tax on a bigger number. You can get pushed into a higher tax bracket than any single year would have put you in on its own. And there's a second effect layered right on top of it. The IRS decides how much of your Social Security gets taxed using something called your provisional income, your other income, plus half your Social Security benefit. Stack 3 years of withdrawals into 1 year, and that provisional income can jump high enough to make up to 85% of his Social Security check suddenly taxable too. Same withdrawals he legally owed anyway, but bunched into 1 year instead of spread across 3, they quietly dragged his Social Security into the taxable column right along with them. Nobody sends you a letter explaining that part in advance. And there's a third ripple most people never see coming until the bill arrives. Medicare looks back 2 years at your income to decide your Part B and Part D premiums, a rule called IRMA. A single high-income year, the kind a 3-year catch-up creates, can push those premiums into a higher bracket the following year, adding hundreds of dollars a month per person on top of everything else. Same mistake, a third bill, arriving quietly through an entirely different door. Let's put the whole thing on the table. 3 years of required withdrawals, all corrected at once, a 25% excise tax on each missed year. That alone came to just over $35,000. Add the extra income tax from bunching 3 years of withdrawals into a single tax return and dragging more of his Social Security into taxable territory along with it. A bit over $10,000 more. $45,565. That's the number. Not from one bad decision, from one envelope, set on a counter 3 separate times. I want to be honest with you about where that number comes from, because this channel only works if I am. It's built from a composite case using the real 2026 tax rules, the excise tax, the withdrawal tables, the Social Security formula, applied to a realistic account balance for someone in this situation. It isn't one real person's tax return. It's what these rules actually do, laid out plainly, so you can see the shape of the mistake before it has a chance to happen to you. And $45,000 is real money at any age, but it's also avoidable almost entirely with one habit most retirees never build. Before I show you that habit, do me one favor. If you've ever set an IRS letter aside without opening it, or you're honestly not sure whether you've taken this year's RMD yet, type the word RMD in the comments. It tells me how many of you are sitting on this quietly right now, and it tells YouTube to put this in front of the people who need to see it before their next deadline. Here's what almost nobody tells you about required withdrawals. They don't happen automatically. Nobody pulls the money out for you. The account custodian can calculate the number, but taking the actual withdrawal is on you every single year for the rest of your life once you start. So the fix isn't complicated, it's a habit, not a strategy. First, pick one date every year, a birthday, a holiday, the first week of December, and treat it like a bill that's always due. Some retirees split it into smaller withdrawals across the year instead of one lump sum in December, so it never feels like a single jarring event. And so a computer error or a late mail delivery can't turn into a missed deadline. Second, open every letter from the IRS or your account custodian the week it arrives. Not because most of them are urgent, most aren't, but because you can't tell the harmless ones from the one that actually matters unless you look. And third, if you're charitably inclined, ask about a qualified charitable distribution. Money sent directly from your IRA to a charity can often count toward your required withdrawal without adding to your taxable income at all. It turns the same obligation into something that costs you far less. Fourth, if you have more than one tax-deferred account, know the rule before you assume anything. Multiple traditional IRAs can be added together and the total withdrawn from just one of them. Multiple old 401ks generally can't. Each one wants its own withdrawal on its own. Assuming one big check covers everything is exactly the kind of mistake that looks harmless right up until it isn't. None of this requires becoming a tax expert. It requires one appointment on your calendar, one habit repeated, and envelopes that get opened instead of set aside. If part of you is uneasy right now because you're not entirely sure you've taken this year's withdrawal, take a breath. You have not lost $45,000. That number took 3 years of the same mistake, repeated, before it grew that large. The good news hiding inside this whole story is that required withdrawals reset every single year. There's no year you're locked out of doing this right. The very next deadline is a chance to get current, and if you're not sure whether you're behind, one phone call to your account custodian this week will tell you exactly where you stand. Now I owe you the honest fine print, because this channel lives on being straight with you. The man in this story is a composite, not a real person. The $45,565 comes from a careful model using 2026 tax rules and a realistic account balance, not an actual filed tax return. Your exact numbers depend on your account balances, your age, your other income, and your filing status. This is education, not personal tax advice. Take it to a tax professional who handles retirement accounts for a living and ask them to check your specific situation this year. Here's what I want you to carry out of this one. It wasn't a bad investment that cost him $45,000. It wasn't a scam or bad advice or a market crash. It was an envelope set on a counter 3 separate times because it didn't look urgent. You've spent decades building this account. The government doesn't send a dramatic warning when it's time to start taking money out. It sends a plain envelope and it expects you to open it. Open the next one every year on purpose before it has the chance to become 3. If this is a mistake you'd rather read about than live through, I've already pulled the next case file for you. It's right there on the screen. A different choice, a different number, the same chance to catch it early. I'll see you in that one.